never know. It's a new week. It's a new race.
Yeah, we'll hope there's no big upsets like that this time. Hopefully both runners can avoid any monumental chokes.
Fun fact, so far this tournament, Frozen's race PB is 1 second faster than Kanaris' race PB.
Oh, really?
if that gives
funny.
you any idea, Frozen's got a 42.10 and Kanaris has a 42.11. So this,
Oh wow.
I don't know,
Okay,
man.
well,
It's gonna be crazy.
if that doesn't tell you how even this race can be, that's like, I mean, damn.
Yeah. So let's
Looks
talk
like rough
about.
anyway.
Yeah, the race has started. We've got our runners going up against Ruby in an intense foot race.
Yeah. So shout out to Kanaris, who's using two of the best objects in the game, the scarf and the rainbow trail. Gotta give him a special shout out for that.
I never quite got into the scarf myself, but I've seen a lot of people love it.
Yeah,
Rainbow Trail,
it's a fan favorite.
It is a fan favorite. Rainbow Trail's nice. I like the cat ears. I like the amethyst wings. I think they're stylish.
Yeah.
Frozen
All.
going with the Myogi skin with the birthday ribbon, which is pretty cool.
Oh yeah, I didn't even notice that.
I think it complements her figure quite nicely, especially with the red hair and stuff. Just kind of matches up.
Kind of blends in pretty well.
He's got the fire trail too, which I always think is interesting. To me, that would throw me off. I always feel like, oh man, the ground's on fire. Don't stand there.
Yeah. So what the runners just did, it's been explained a lot before. It's like one of the most prevalent skips in the game. It's a damage boost. So they take damage from one of the little floating eyeballs, and if you can like time your jump just as you take damage or just afterwards, you can get like a little bit of extra height, which lets you skip a couple of segments in the game. That was the first one in the game. There's a lot more coming up later. Some of which are a lot bigger in time save as well. And also some pretty risky ones, which I imagine Kanaris will probably go for because he always seems to.
There are some that they're very tiny time saves, but if you nail them, I mean, it's a good feeling.
Yeah.
They both picked up their feathers there. It should be noted after they cleared out that first portal. Just lets them have the flutter ability, so now they can jump and flutter, which just lets them have a bit more mobility in the air.
Yeah, adds another layer to the movement mechanics now, so they can like think about how they're moving around. Come up to the. Kanaris is trying the jetty skip, so see how many tries it takes him.
As you can see there, Kanaris unfortunately failed at it. And it's a skip that it saves time if you get it within the first 1 or 2 tries. Fortunately, took a few more attempts than that, but eventually gets it.
I always have to applaud him for trying it, especially when he gets it like quickly.
He's
Luckily,
actually
he got it in the end.
Kanaris is making himself known for going for stuff like that. I mean, he's the first runner to really be going for jetty skip consistently in runs. He's actually now got basically the world record for the fastest time in the floating keep.
Yeah.
And
He got sub 5 already, didn't he?
Yeah, sub 5 in game, I believe it was, and 5 minutes flat RTA. So it's
pretty crazy. So both runners on the first boss of the game now. Frozen having a mirror match, Myogi versus Myogi. So in this fight we use Sloth? Yeah, Sloth. Using Sloth lets you do 8 damage per hit, which lets you defeat the boss in only 3 cycles. Whereas normally using the basic weapon takes 6. I think it's the only boss in the game where this weapon's used. So I think there's a couple of other uses for it in platforming, but boss-wise it won't get too much use.
Yeah, on Pagora there's a couple attacks that you can use Sloth for, which just save a little bit of time, but it's not a big deal. Most runners don't opt to use that. This segment now, after defeating the first boss, Myogi, our runners have the ability to slide, so you'll see them doing that quite a bit now throughout the rest of the run. Just lets you do some horizontal movement more quickly, also lets you make some tougher jumps a little bit more easier. And Kanaris looks like going for the reset strats. I actually thought he was going to go for the pixel jump.
I did as well for a moment. I was hoping to see it. Although I understand why he wouldn't, considering Jetty Skip didn't go too well. So
yeah, absolutely.
Don't want to risk too much here.
So reset strats, you'll see some runners do those quite a bit, where they'll take the save and then immediately just basically take a death. And what that does is loads the game up immediately so that you have the exact same status of the screen as you would any other time you take a death there, which basically just resets a cycle, makes it more consistent with something you're practiced up on. Some runners will do that more often than others. Some runners just prefer to wing it and go as fast as they can, or they even prefer to go for a cycle that might extend past that screen and go on to other screens as well. So it kind of comes down to preference.
Yeah. But Kanaris is actually caught up here. He lost a bit of time with Jetty Sleep, but he's caught up to Frozen now. Both runners on Pagora, which is one of the most... It can go a lot of ways. He has a lot of different attacks. Certain attacks can make this boss fight go a lot faster. Neither runner has gotten the best attack, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, it looks like they both got stomps first, which is the worst RNG.
Oh, that's a painful death on Kanaris' pod.
So yeah, Frozen clearing out Pagora. Kanaris unfortunately taking a fall. As we talked about earlier, one of the biggest time savers or losses in this run is going to be just down to who survives the boss's first try.
Yeah. And
Frozen's getting a bit of an edge there. So I guess we should explain following skip here. At the very beginning of this area that Frozendoze is on, there's an auto-scroller that you're locked into vertically, and you have to kind of fly through the air and snipe a bunch of enemies and dodge missiles and stuff. But what you can do is you can use an alternate save file to give your character the ability to double jump once from the air. And so by doing that, you can actually jump outside of the auto-scroller. So it's a glitch that we let runners use once during the run, just because it saves about a minute, and the auto-scroller is pretty luck-heavy and isn't a lot of fun for most people.
Yeah, it's not the most exciting segment of the game, especially for speedruns, so...
Plus, there's this cool glitch that you're seeing them get that we kind of, in a friendly way, refer to as Ruby Backpack, where Ruby ends up on your back, and you're able to get these physics where you kind of just can fly anywhere you want. And it actually allows for some cool stuff, and in other categories there's some sequence breaking you can do with it, so it's a neat glitch to be able to pull out.
I always thought of it as the Ruby jetpack, seeing as how she's just like flying off around it with you, using her as a infinite jump. Alright, so Frozen's coming up to the third boss in the game now, Electrum. Similar to Pagora, there's an order of attacks you can get, or lack of an attack you can get, which can make this fight go a bit faster. He has 4 attacks. If he doesn't do a certain one, then you can end this fight, although, yeah, he's doing the attack now. If he doesn't do orbs, it's the only attack you can't damage him on. So obviously in a perfect world, you don't really want that attack. But it's kind of not too likely that that happens.
Another thing to note is you'll notice both our runners entering this boss with some HP missing. You can do a thing in this game, like we mentioned before, taking saves allow you to reset back to that save. In order to save time here, our runners will actually skip multiple save points heading to this boss, because then after they defeat the boss, they can just take a death warp back to the save they were at. So even though they take some damage getting here, it's worth it time-wise to continue on and risk it and beat the boss, and then just warp back to where you started.
Yeah, it's always gets a bit nerve-wracking when you see runners on low HP here, though. I'm looking at Kanaris on 25 health, and if he takes 2 hits, it's going to be not too great. Frozen having downed Electrum, though, on his way to the second part of the Veil now, which has one of the biggest skips of the game, the Veil damage boost. And it looks like Kanaris is okay. He's down to Electrum, so he's going to be on his way to Veil 2 as well in just a moment.
Indeed, and you'll notice Electrum drops a feather upon death, and that allows our runners to now be able to shoot orbs. They're called, I think it's purification orbs or something.
Something like that.
They allow you to just shoot. It's kind of like a gun, but you have 3 bullets, and they recharge one at a time, kind of slowly. So they're not incredibly powerful, but they are useful for a lot of things, and definitely can add to the damage on certain bosses, and are in fact required for some. But yeah, so what we're going to see here on Frozendoze's side of the screen is he's going to be going for a setup here. He's going to take this yellow save, and then he's going to go and set up on top of this windmill saw blade thingy and take a hit intentionally, and that's going to let him damage boost up here and basically skip about 1/2 of this area. So it's a time save that's upwards of 30 to 40 seconds, and just cuts out a lot of the platforming here. It's a pretty neat skip. It is a bit dangerous because you take that extra damage, and then if you take a death, it's a pretty long recovery time.
I've noticed a lot more runners in the tournament have been taking the safety hard after doing that skip. I guess just to make things a little less risky for a race setting.
Well, there was a patch last year where Solarman patched the game for the first time in a long time, and one of the things he changed was he made the rock throwers, the orc girls, when they die, their explosion of fire, you used to be able to just walk through that and take no damage, but now that actually hurts you, the explosion. So that's enough damage of a difference that most runners don't feel comfortable having taken the damage to do the boost to then continue without the heart. So it makes a pretty big difference. Yeah,
that's fair enough, for sure. Also, with noting, Kanaris has actually caught up pretty well here, given the unfortunate time losses. He's now even with Frozen on Amethyst. Frozen's a tiny bit ahead. So I'm seeing in chat Ziggy, apparently Frozen took the save, which means after killing Amethyst, assuming it means he saved before Amethyst, so he won't be able to have the save warp.
Yeah, Frozen took the save right before the boss, and looks like Kanaris did not. Kanaris, I think, in general, played that Veil too a bit more risky-like, whereas Frozen opted for some safety with the extra yellow save and stuff on the way. Which, again, playing safe versus playing risky, that's kind of what we were expecting coming in. We know Kanaris, he likes to be a bit on the swag side, he likes to play more aggressively. Frozen tends to prefer just getting through the platforming, because his specialty is the bosses.
Yeah. I'm expecting a really, really nice final boss from Frozen this run, as Frozen is the king of the final boss of this game.
I always enjoy watching Frozen play J2, it's pretty fun.
I think both runners are going to kill Amethyst around the same time here. Yep, Frozen's down to, and Kanaris is also... Ooh, teleport. Yeah, so both runners are actually pretty even right now. Kanaris with a slight edge, seeing as how he didn't take the save before Amethyst. He can port back to just before Darkheim Village and actually gain a slight edge on Frozen now. Coming up to the next big stage of the game, which is the Grotto.
The Grotto is a fun area. We're going to see Kanaris do a cool sloth strat here to snipe that bat, and he does another one in just a second.
I like that. That's a nice strat. I'm always glad when sloth strats are used.
Yeah, they're definitely neat. Sloth is a weapon. We should probably mention that it's unique to the others. It's the most powerful weapon in terms of a single burst of damage. I think it does 8 damage in one swipe, whereas the normal weapon Pride does 4, and then the other weapons tend to do less damage, but they have higher DPS. But what's unique about Sloth is because of its high burst nature, the way that the game maker actually designed this is he made it so that you can, with Sloth, you have to use it as a wind-up ability. So you initiate the attack button, and then a split second later the weapon will actually fire, whereas the other weapons are instant. And this lets you use it uniquely because you can actually wind it up before you reach an enemy, and then swipe something and just clear it out of your path. And so Kanaris used it to great effect there, getting past those bats and then the spiders in the tunnels to just save some frames over what Frozendoze is doing.
Yeah, it definitely takes a bit of practice to get used to the timing of the wind-up of Sloth, but it definitely pays off when you do get it. I've also seen I've seen runners use Wrath on the spider tunnel to quickly kill the spiders, as opposed to Sloth. I think either one works, depends on which one you're more comfortable with. Absolutely.
We're going to see Kanaris here, he's doing a cool strat that has recently kind of been explored, which is using this bat here to give you the iframe, so you'll take a hit, and then because you're invincible for a split second...
Ooh. He was really, really pushing that there.
That was pretty rough.
Yeah, the extra hit I think from the mine gave him a bit awkward time there.
Yeah, it should be noted those mines underwater, those deal 50% of your HP, so you don't want to hit one. And Kanaris' strat there is kind of a gamble. You're going for taking 20 damage from the bat instead of 50 from the mine. So if you take 2 hits from the bat and then use the iframes to clip through the mines, you actually get out with a pretty healthy amount of HP for the boss, and it's fairly fast. Whereas most runners will just try to avoid the mines altogether, which is a bit slower.
Yeah, I'm glad he's taking the safety save, because he was on, I think it was like 30 HP there. Going into air, I think each hit does 20 damage, so only taking 2 hits was a bit of a risk, especially after last time. Last race, Kanaris did die on Dark Annihilator after entering it on very low HP, alongside the bat as well. So I think he's sort of learned his lesson and
absolutely
a bit of a safety.
And so on this boss, we should mention this is the boss that, or one of the bosses where the only way to fight this boss is to shoot orbs, the range attack we got earlier. So you'll notice the runners will stand further back and just use their ranged weapon. They can't use their melee on him at all. Also, certain attacks on this boss will deal 20 damage, and certain will do less. So sometimes you'll see runners who, if they know they're going to get hit, they'll intentionally take a hit from something that does less damage, so that they can just, in general, have more survivability, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, and with this boss, you never want to stop shooting Dark Annihilator. If you actually don't like shoot him at all, there is like a softening ridge, like if you like all the way to the right, there's like a hit. So you're actually on like a time limit on this boss. But as long as you keep on shooting orbs, there's basically like there won't be a great deal of difference in time. You just gotta keep on juggling all the different things that he's throwing at you, and just keep on shooting the boss. It's a pretty consistent boss. I think one of the most consistent in the game.
Ooh, Frozen just took a fairly costly platforming death, so they're actually only about a half screen apart or so now.
Yeah, the gap is closing a bit.
As we were hoping, this is turning out to be a fairly close race. It's gone back and forth several times already. So. This section. Go ahead.
I was gonna say this is a fairly long auto scroller, so if there's ever a time for the equalizer to happen, this can be it. This can make either run go kind of badly, but generally it's a fairly consistent auto scroller, so I don't think either run is worried too much.
Yeah, this area of the game in general, this as well as everything up until the next boss, is composed of a lot of minecarts and switches with lasers and stuff. And for the most part, the platforming, there's no real luck to it, and there's very little interaction with enemies either. So for the most part, our runners are just going to be worried about just completing the jumps and staying alive. You'll see a lot of people go for skipping save points to save some time, which I believe our runners skipped a couple early on.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the most consistent stages in the game, with, like I said, one of the most consistent bosses is Dark Annihilator. Terravine, the next boss, can go a bit wrong, depending, but we'll see what happens. I have seen runs lost to Terravine due to unexpected RNG or just slight mishaps.
Yeah, Terravine is... We always joke it's kind of like the D-Rust runner killer, because it's a boss that does a lot of damage, and oh no, Frozen with the death there. Looks like he didn't shoot the switch as much as he thought he did or something.
Yeah, I couldn't even see the lasers there. I thought you must have like clipped the spike, but he was like inside the gap, so I'm not even sure. That was a rough death. Funny, I was saying too, with the auto scrollers coming up, anything can happen here. A lot of time can be lost, and unfortunately, Frozen did take a hit there, which sort of set him back a little bit.
Yeah, that's an unfortunate death. I've seen players where they'll shoot that switch and then they'll commit to jumping over there, but they'll miss the switch on the way over, which leads to that happening. I think Frozen actually shot at the switch 3 times, and I'm not sure exactly what happened, but it looked like he was maybe just a split-second late on his timing from when he shot the switch the first time.
Yeah.
Alright, so Terravine here. Big damage dealer. Kanaris clearing it out just fine. It's a boss where you kind of want to trade your HP in order to deal damage faster. So you'll see runners a lot of times get dangerously low in health in order to get a fast kill. And Kanaris did it pretty well there.
Yeah, usually in a casual playthrough, you take the minecarts one by one, and then every 3 attacks he does this giant laser of death which one-shots you. So you expend the lasers like after each one of those. But in speedruns, we just use all of them at once to do extra damage and just like burst him down as fast as possible. Kanaris had a rough start to the Underworld there. The first save of the Underworld, in my opinion, is probably one of the harder ones. It's like a big gauntlet full of enemies. There are movement strats, but it's really, really easy to mess it up, and also the burn damage, in particular from the fire, can really take down your HP quite a lot.
One big part of the run of Wings of V is becoming a master at manipulating enemies, because all of them kind of interact with you in different ways. You'll see the convings, the little red dudes with the yellow eyes, they float after you, and you manipulate their movement a bit based on how you move, and so you can get them to bob upwards more or downwards more, or just go straight at you. And then the skeletons, they'll lock onto your position and dash at you from different places. And so you have to kind of learn how to move in such a way that the enemies avoid you in order to do some of these strats. Otherwise, you're just going to take a lot of bops. So it's fairly dangerous, and the small mistake can get you comboed and taken out pretty easily.
Yeah, and this stage in particular has some very, very punishing segments. I mean, there's a few segments with like crumbly platforms. Say if like you jump on that and then get hit by something else, you'll have nowhere to land. Or if you're just not careful with your jumps, it's really, really easy to mess up on the underworld. In my opinion, probably the second hardest stage of the game.
It's definitely up there. Frozen's having some trouble with the underworld portal here. It's a section of the run where I think a lot of times you don't expect to die here. But if you make one or two small mistakes, or if you just get a bit unlucky with enemy patterns being different than you expected, it can go south pretty fast.
Yeah.
Frozen's having some bad luck.
Looks like he's got it now, thankfully. And Kanaris coming up to the first boss of the underworld, Kradarak, which he'll be at in moments. Kradarak is similar to Dia in the way that you are constantly firing orbs at him, damaging through melee means. And the damage mechanic here for runs, to speed it up, he has an attack where he shoots down rocks from above. The more rocks that you can fire back at him, the better. Because of this though, the rocks are actually aimed at your position, so you want to be stood sort of close to the boss. So I think Kanaris is going to get it now to try and shoot as many rocks as he can into him. Each one does a pretty hefty amount of damage. I think he got all of them there.
That looked like a full 5 rocks to me. Looks like he missed a bit of orb damage, because if you have optimal damage there, you can get him below 40% health, which allows for the possibility of a really cool and rare event where you can actually get a 2-cycle kill on Kradarak, which saves a significant chunk of time. It's only happened a handful of times ever in the history of the speedrun, though, so...
Yeah, it requires a pretty hefty amount of RNG and skill, so it's not very common. Nice. It's a pretty clean kill, though. Be done with Kradarak in moments.
Despite how much trouble Frozen had on the Underworld section, he's still on the boss before Kanaris was done with it, so it's still not quite a full segment of the game apart.
Yeah, other than the portal, I don't think Frozen struggled too much in Underworld. He had a pretty decent one. Might be able to catch up now in the second part.
Absolutely. Kanaris doing Kanaris things.
Yeah, saw that. Going for swag strats there, costing him a little bit of time.
Kanaris has some insane strats, especially on the top key of this area. So what the runners will do here, looking over at Kanaris' side of the screen, is there are 3 forks in the road here, and you're going to collect a key from the end of each fork. And then once you get the key, you're intended to then take the save and backtrack through a different path, but the runners will just use a death warp to go back to the beginning. It actually saves your key despite not taking a save point. So saves a lot of time on the backtrack, also saves some difficulty with some of the backtracks being quite difficult.
Yeah. Kanaris also making use of a flutter dash mechanic there, where if you flutter right after using a flutter dash feather, you sort of keep your momentum, which lets you get a lot more distance out. And actually skipped like a landing there. There are a couple more segments in the game where this is done, but pretty cool, like little... I don't really want to call it a glitch, but it's like a usage of mechanics, I guess. Yeah.
I mean, we've talked to the developer, Sullivan. He said that it definitely, the way it works is not a glitch. It's just, I guess, an unintended behavior of...
Yeah.
Something he didn't think about was you can just use flutter in conjunction with your dash to get some extra distance. I did not know.
Very strange things.
He does some crazy strats. Things that most runners will definitely not go for.
No. So coming up is the probably, well, I think it is the biggest skip of the game, because you're skipping an entire boss. Right after Kanaris has got on the top key, he's gonna reset. He's gonna manipulate a conving, which is the little floating eyeball thingies, and he's gonna bring that to the boss room, and he's gonna damage boost over the boss trigger, and basically just skip it entirely, so he can just move on to the next stage. So hopefully he gets it first try.
Nicely done.
Yeah, very nice.
It's past that. It's not the most precise thing to do, but it is not free. It's something that you'll see a decent amount of runners. They'll get nervous there, they'll mess up, and then they'll try to figure out what they did wrong. It's a pretty hefty time loss if you miss it once. And
I'm still sad the best boss in the game is skipped, or one of the best. At least the best music.
Absolutely, the music of the Ancient Constructs fight. If you haven't played this game, it's absolutely worth playing just so you can fight that boss and experience it with the music and everything. It's a really fun boss. So one thing we're going to see here is on this next screen, as Kanaris goes through this door, he's going to set up for the skip we call the library skip. There's a big section of the platforming to the right here, and Kanaris is going to use that flutter dash mechanic to get an unintended amount of height and just go through the ceiling there and skip that entire area.
Yeah, what makes that hard is that you can't, after grabbing the feather, you only have a certain amount of time before the feather sort of like loses its power on you. So you have to grab the feather, land really quickly, and then immediately dash and then flutter again to get your momentum. If you don't do it fast enough, well, it just doesn't work. So it's quite a tricky little skip, actually. It takes a bit of practice.
Frozen also making his way past Ancient Constructs. I think that was first try for him as well, so this is still... I mean, Kanaris has an obvious lead, but it's not so far apart that it's hopeless for Frozen right now. I think...
Oh yeah, anything could happen still, for sure.
With solid play from Frozen, I think he can definitely catch up, and there's a lot of difficult stuff. I mean, Wings of E, as a lot of platforming type games go, the further into the run you get, the more difficult the game becomes. So it's definitely scary in the late game, and it's easy to make a lot of mistakes.
Yeah, I mean, after seeing some of the strats that Kanaris has used this run, I'm always worried he's going to try doing some kind of crazy, like, some sort of crazy strat that no one's seen before and cost a bunch of time. So, we'll see what happens. I expect him to go for something weird in Path of Decay.
Also, should be mentioned this next boss, Mayogi 2. So Mayogi, the first boss of the game who we fought at the very beginning, she's back for revenge here, and she's a bit upgraded, but there's a cool skip you can do here that saves about 40 seconds if you nail it first try, which if you miss it, you're kind of you're just losing time no matter what you do. And if Kanaris misses that and Frozen nails it, that could even this right back up.
Yeah, the great equalizer of runs kills many runs, and yeah, it's pretty tricky.
It's coming up here. He's got one more cycle on Mayogi before he sets up for the skip. At the very beginning of the fight, he healed her a certain amount of times, and what that does is it lets you set up her HP so that it's at an exact point where she's transitioning from one phase to another when you stun her. And so you're trying to stun her at the same time the other phase begins to cancel it.
That looks good to me.
That was good. So
yep, Kanaris got the skip. Okay, nice.
Kanaris
just skipped about a 30-second enrage phase where you can't do any damage and you just have to avoid things. Obviously that's quite a big time save. So hopefully Frozen can keep up and do the skip as well. Because it can make quite a bit of a division between the two runners. Kanaris actually getting kind of low here. Okay, scaring me for moments, but
yes.
Still alive.
Speedruns of this game oftentimes have those scary moments at the end of a boss fight where it's like you know that the boss is so close to dying, but so are you, and you've just got to clutch it out.
I think especially when you're on like a lot of HP as well, you can kind of get complacent and just like, that's fine, just like, you know, I can take a few hits, and then before you know it, oh, I'm one hit away from death. Probably need to be careful now.
Just want to give a shout out to the names of these enemies here, the Maggots and Maggot Queens.
Yes.
Solgren clarified for us earlier in the tournament, since we all kind of call them different things.
Yeah, I don't know why. I think he used to call these like orc babies or something. I have no idea what they were.
Orc babies?
Well, you fight the twin orcs at the end of this, so, you know, I figured they were related to orcs somehow. Like orc cocoons or something.
So Kanaris going for the password here.
Yep. And as expected, first try, very well done to Kanaris.
That's pretty hype, man. That password, it's pretty hard to do. And Frozen getting the skip as well. I'm not sure which of those two things is more hype.
It's a tough call, I don't know, man. It's a struggle. Let's just be equally excited.
Alright, so Frozen cleaning up the Mayogi 2 fight fairly easily, going for the lava skip there for some swag points. And Kanaris, meanwhile, is in the chambers, and this area of the game is one of my favorites. It's got some cool platforming with spikes and traps and all sorts of neat things, and it's definitely, the difficulty has amped up here. It's very common for runners to die a few times getting through this area, but it's pretty fun.
Yeah, I think the chambers was my favorite part of the run, platforming-wise. It always felt really satisfying to do quickly. Because there's like a lot of segments that like you can really make it easier by waiting or doing it more slowly, but doing it faster, it's more fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
but it does come at a risk. Also, Kanaris, here there's like a strat. To avoid killing the skeletons, there's a very specific set of movements you can do where they won't really hit you and you can just run to the end. Kanaris did land on the ground there though. If you never touch the ground when the centaur spawns, he tries to target your position and jump to you, but because you never touch the ground, he just kind of jumps off the edge and, you know, kind of dies. Kanaris unfortunately has touched the ground twice now, forcing him to actually like deal with the centaur.
So what he's trying to do, I guess we should point out, is there are these purple walls to the left of your screen there. We call them fog walls. And what they do is they detect if there's an enemy on the screen. And as long as there's an enemy on the screen, they're a barrier. They don't let you pass. But as soon as there's enemies off the screen, they lower and you can just move. And so what that's intended to do is to force you to have to kill the enemies. But by manipulating the skeletons to travel off screen, and then also manipulating the centaur to jump off screen, you can actually get through this screen without killing anything at all.
There you go. So what Kanaris is trying to do there, he just saw the centaur jumped off the edge to its death. So if you do touch the floor, I think he has 35 HP. It's kind of a pain to deal with, to be honest. That's why it's not ideal. It just takes way too long to kill, even with the best weapon.
Should be noted here that if Frozen gets through the skeleton screen pretty fast, he will have gained quite a bit of ground on Kanaris in the chambers.
Yeah, Frozen has had a good chance to catch up here. Kanaris entering the Twin Orcs. Probably one of the most like stylish fights of the game for speed strats. Rather than using the platform itself, he just kind of hops on and off using greed to constantly do damage to the Orcs and dodge all the attacks at the same time. Very tricky strat, but also very, very quick, especially when the normal fight takes kind of a long time due to only being able to shoot them or hit one at a time.
Frozen giving me a mini heart attack there, but got through the skeleton screen.
Yeah.
After I think like 2 tries or so. Kanaris here trying to finish up these orcs. He's doing the kind of the more classic style of this boss where you transition from purple's side over to red to end that phase at a different time, which makes red's phase actually a bit shorter, which a lot of runners are no longer opting to do. So we'll see what Frozen tries to do. But so there's a couple different ways of dealing with this fight anymore. And it's kind of cool to see which runners prefer which. But Kanaris does a nice job there cleaning up orcs first try.
Yeah, so Kanaris moving on to the final like main stage of the game now, the Path of Decay. As you can tell by the color scheme, it's basically like the hell of the world. So it's pretty tricky. A lot of tricky sections in it. There's like a long gauntlet, like a climb. There's a lot of enemies, and even some puzzling segments. So
yeah, so
I mean, it's like my worst nightmare. So
these screens here, like we just saw, you've got to touch a switch that looks like a pulsing or beating heart. You got to hit it multiple times to lower a wall so that you can get through. And they usually combine that with crumbly platforms that you can only touch once, unless you do strats that let you touch them more times, which is frame perfect.
Alright, pretty good on Kanaris' part there. I'm pretty sure he did a kind of risky strat in that last heart room, but it worked.
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely. You went for that double touch on that switch, which is actually very precise and is more or less difficult depending on how one of the spikes on that screen spawns in. Sometimes it's a bigger spike, sometimes it's a smaller one, and that can impact how difficult that is. But they're a few saves apart. They're both getting through this fairly quickly.
Yeah, I mean, with 3 bosses left, anything can happen, really. I like how Kanaris landed on the vertical part of the snake there. Fun. Actually, haven't seen that before.
Looks like he's going for that swag bone snake strat, which is kind of new. And Kanaris, I think, told me he wasn't going to use this during this race today, and Frozen told me he was going to use it. So we'll kind of see if this gains or loses enough time to make a difference. But
yeah. So Frozen's on the climb now. The climb is probably one of like the most daunting segments of a casual playthrough. There's like a really kind of long tower with crumbly platforms and a lot of different enemies. And then at the end, you're like, oh, I did it, and then moving at the next screen, and there's like 3 convings and a giant worm, and you're like, oh. So, I know that definitely broke a few hearts first playthrough.
Absolutely. Kanaris getting that feather touch for the space meatball, we like to call it, or the demon form, where V can actually transform into this kind of red blob with teeth, and then fly for a bit, which is kind of cool for some of these maze-like sections here, where spikes on all sides will kill you. Frozen having trouble with the bone snake. I don't think he was going for the swag stuff. He's just having trouble in general, which is unfortunate.
Yeah. Sometimes it just causes you a bit of issue, doesn't it? It's always tricky.
So again, as soon as this segment of the run is over here, the Path of Decay, we're going to be entering what basically is a boss rush. There's going to be 3 bosses almost right in a row with a little bit of platforming in between. So it's kind of the part of the run where things are scary and it's easy to choke and lose a lot of time. But we'll see if Kanaris is able to maintain his lead throughout all of this.
It looks like Kanaris didn't repeat the same mistake this time with the Centaur, and actually managed to get to jump off the edge. Because that can cost a bit of time. The last 4 screens of Path of Decay are like 4 screens of enemies with no saves, so it's kind of a bit of a gauntlet for the boss rush, as Kay called it.
Frozen getting that swag space meatball strat where he slides through the spike in the ceiling, which is pretty neat. Kanaris now entering the Azrael fight. Azrael is kind of unique because, well, first off, the ground underneath your feet is not stable. She can pull those platforms away from you at any time, and you have to touch these green souls, which will fall and bring them back for you. And then you're just kind of constantly dodging stuff and using your demon form to give you more time in the air and trying to chip away slowly at her HP. If you go all out on her, she actually raises up a shield after, I think it's 5 hits, and she will be invincible for a few seconds, and it's a bit of a time loss, so you want to avoid doing too much damage at once here.
Yeah, Kanaris having a bit of a risky time here. He's on 1 hit now, will kill him, and Azrael still has about half HP. There's also not many platforms, so this is going to be a kind of a tight fight. Let's see if he can clutch it. Hopefully he can.
I'm not so sure how much more of this my heart can take right now.
He had a dodge at one point where he was like in between 2 of the things.
Yeah. Frozen on the boss too. We really are not that far apart from each other. If Kanaris takes a death here, it could be a race decider, honestly. Got to be very careful. He's got the boss in a good position, though.
Yeah.
Oh.
No. I think he sort of just tried to go for the kill there and hoped it wouldn't activate the I don't know what to call them, like the needles.
Yeah. Those red spikes, what they do, the way they work and interact with the player is they surround you and they show you that there's one direction, one of the 8 directions you can go in that will allow you to get out without being touched, and any of the other 8 will hit you for 20 damage. And they come chasing in on you, they enclose on you when you press the attack button. But when they first appear, you have probably like a half second or so that you can actually attack Azrael without triggering those spikes to enclose on you. So Kanaris was there trying to play a little bit greedy, was going a little bit fast, hoping to just finish off the boss. But unfortunately, I think he waited just a little bit too long.
Yeah, it was an unfortunate death. Azrael, I'd say, is many speedrunners' like nightmare. She kills a lot of runs. A lot of things can go wrong. Like, you got the platforms that are going down that you gotta replenish. She has the portals that spawn, and if you leave them, they just get bigger and bigger until you can't deal with them anymore. There's like the skeleton hand that like walks around the screen. There's like the needles that like Pick just described. There's a lot of stuff to keep up with. It's just like a juggling fight.
So Frozen had kind of a close call at the end there too. He didn't have a lot of HP left. He's able to get past the boss. So he's got a little bit of segment of platforming here. You gotta get trolled by these fire guys a little bit before you can move on. And hopefully Kanaris can get past Azrael this time and make his way to catch up a little bit.
Yeah, his trees is looking a bit better than before, but I don't wanna jinx it. He's being a bit safe. He doesn't want to try and go all in, which is pretty clever. The portals are actually blocking. Okay, you might just sniper.
Sometimes Azrael will do that, where she spawns these giant portals, which their hitbox is kind of deceptively small compared to the sprite. But once they get really large, she'll go and stand behind them, and then you can't shoot her for a minute unless you get a good position on her. And so that was unfortunate, but okay. Kanaris out of Azrael. Frozendoze onto the first fight with our final boss here, J-Will. This fight is kind of an interesting one. Again, just like Kradavrak before, how you could shoot rocks back at the boss, this boss will spawn spikes, which you can use to get extra damage in by shooting them back at the boss. Headshots do extra damage, so Frozen will want to go for headshots here. You got a few shots in the chest. They still do a lot of damage, but they do about 50% more if you get the headshot.
Yeah, I mean, the way it is at the moment, if Frozen avoids any boss deaths, he has the race in the bag. But one boss death can change everything. If it's gonna happen, it'll be on the final boss, because that's, it's the final boss. It's the hard one. But Frozendoze is particularly really good final boss. He's known for especially getting some crazily fast final boss kills, so this is it's gonna be a tight end.
There are a couple different ways of fighting this boss. Frozen's using the Lust weapon. It's the longer range weapon. It's a little bit slower, a little bit safer. Kanaris is going for NV strats, which is a little bit faster, but a little bit more aggressive and easier to get hit. So I think this is just what the runners prefer to do, but in this situation, Kanaris actually can save a little bit of time on Frozen if things go his way. But meanwhile, Frozen has climbed up to the top and is ready to face the final form of Jaewul.
This is a very clean fight on Kanaris' part. He's done like a lot of headshots, doing a lot of damage with Envy. If Frozen dies, he has a chance to come back. If not, like I said, it's in the bag for Frozen. We'll have to see what happens here.
Yeah. And it's never over till it's over. It's very common for runners to have a choky death on J2. This boss is terrifyingly difficult. You are constantly having to track the movement of this boss. You're having to constantly jump across the gap in the middle of the arena here. One mistake on jumping can cause you to fall and instantly die. Your HP is constantly being drained, so you have to pick up health orbs and track those as they go around the screen. Taking bops from the boss that damage does not get recovered, so you don't actually heal up past the amount of just the passive damage you're taking.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really kind of wondering how risky Frozen's going to play this, but I mean, even just playing it safe, like he should have this. I'm not sure if he knows that he's like in the lead.
Frozen took an unfortunate bop there, actually.
Yeah.
Sometimes those eyeball thingies, as they're standing around, as you're waiting for J2 to dive on you, they usually don't hit you, but that time he took a hit, so that might impact his decision.
J2 is like on his last 10-15% HP now. Frozen still has a few hits left in him. So long as he stays safe, he should have this.
Just gotta hit the last few shots and
yep, and that's GG to Frozen. Congratulations, get your GGs out in shots. The winner of the race. And
so Frozen
coming up close
does.
behind soon should be Kanaris with the clear as well.
Looks like Frozen finished with an SRL time of 42.03, which was 7 seconds faster than his previous best race time so far in this tournament.
It's pretty good. Kanaris has got a pretty clean fight here. He hasn't really taken any damage at all. Well, as I said that, he took skill laser to the face, so hopefully that isn't a downward spiral. See what happens. Based on the fact that Kanaris has just joined the channel, I'm assuming he hasn't died on J2, but yeah, and there is the kill. Both runners have down J2 and saved the day.
Indeed.
GG's out in shots for Kanaris.
Kanaris, don't forget to done in the Speedruns Live channel. But all right, so really that was a pretty close race. I mean, we are going by the real time there that we see on screen for the win or loss results of the race, but the in-game time is actually what we go by for the average times, and I think those were very close, so pretty crazy.
Yeah, that was a close race in general. There were a lot of times that both runners were like back and forth from each other. A couple of costly mistakes kind of evened it out a bit, but that was definitely one hell of a race.
All right, Frozen, Kanaris, either of you here? You want to talk about your runs at all, or?
Hey Cake.
Hey,
Frozen.
you're Frozen.
Congratulations. Yeah, thank you. I think it was a pretty okay run. I don't know what happened in Grotto, and that kind of tilted me in the early game, where I got killed by the laser.
Oh yeah, I couldn't tell you that. I couldn't even see the lasers when I was watching. I thought you died to the spike at first, but it looked like you went inside. So
Yeah, I
that wasn't-
somehow didn't. I somehow missed the switch, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've seen it happen to a couple of people lately where if you shoot that switch,
I would. Yeah.
it's like you barely hit below or above it, and then you commit to the jump, and then you missed it barely by like a pixel or so, and it's a little unfortunate. So yeah, definitely a tilting moment there, and you recovered nicely though.
Yeah, it's something I think, change now, and I will just take the top switch. Because that happened twice to me now, so that's not nice.
Anything else that stood out to you about your run?
I don't know. It was kind of solid. My chambers was okay. Both decay was okay. Was just okay overall.
It was pretty close, especially on the final boss, because I think you were about like 30 seconds into the final boss when Kanaris was just about entering it. So if you had died, it definitely
Yeah.
swapped places at the end.
I didn't want to die, and I knew when I don't have to laser tank to win, so I didn't.
Yeah, I was saying if you played it safe, you had it in the bag, and that is what ended up happening.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there were a few big lead changes during this race. Like you mentioned, Frozen, when you took that death there in Sinister Grotto. And earlier in the Grotto, actually, Kanaris had been, I believe he was ahead at the time when he was going down it through the minefield and accidentally took a bot from a mine when he was doing the Bernice, the bat strats. And that ended up sending him back because he took a death there in the minefield. And then later on, you had that death there in the Grotto with the laser. Kanaris took the lead at Terravine. And then at the end of the game, actually, Kanaris was ahead for a large part of it, and then unfortunately took that death to Azrael.
Yeah, the Azrael death was pretty costly, unfortunately.
I saw it on the restream too. That made me kind of nervous.
But man, it was really back and forth between both of you. Kanaris, any comments on your run?
No comment.
No comment.
Oh.
I mean,
GG,
honestly, you had a lot of really clean segments. You had some trouble in a few places, but it was a really decent run, solid overall.
Yeah, for sure. I always like watching your strats, Kanaris, because you do things that no one else seems to do. Always makes it entertaining.
Some of that swag, I think it was especially Underworld 2 with the bottom key strats that I didn't really check. The top key feather skip, the feather skip on the worm chase. I don't think I've seen you do that one before, but I guess you must have practiced it some. That was pretty intense.
No, I haven't done that in runs before. It was just for the swag, for the viewers.
What a swag.
You know me.
Well, point out also, before the race, I heard that Frozendoze was going to go for the swag bone sneak strats.
Yeah,
and
I was going
with
to
Kanaris, Kanaris went for it too. It was kind of cool.
I wanted to go for the first one, but like I died twice to the gate, and I just wanted to continue.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I think you sort of reach a point where you just decide to play it a bit safer, not worth the risk.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, anyone want to say any more closing comments?
Nice race, Kanaris.
Thanks. GG.
GG.
Well, good
Yeah, it was a
games.
fun race.
Good game to both of our runners. So that's going to move Frozendoze. I believe, does that put you up now 3-1 in the tournament? And
Exactly.
Kanaris, you're now 2-2. Which Kanaris, you're definitely not out for brackets yet. Keep in mind, if you just win your next race, you'll have a 3-2 record, which I think several people who are getting into brackets will have. And your average race time is going to be a big factor there. And you haven't exactly had bad race times, so it's very likely still for you to get in the brackets, and you can make a big run there. And Frozen sitting now at 3-1 already. If you're I think you're 1 win away now from an automatic qualification for the bracket phase. So both of you have something writing on the next match for sure. Just got to play your heart out, and I think you'll have a good chance.
Yeah, it's getting tense.
It's getting tense.
But coming up, I believe now in
about 11 hours time or so, I think it is.
Yeah, 11 hours. We got Gigameth versus Amimi, which will be kind of a fun matchup. Ziggy, I think,
and then a couple of hours after that, yeah, that's right. And then a couple of hours after that one is Dash versus Squall. So we've got a couple more races going on tonight. That's something to look forward to if you want more V action in your life.
Both those races will be on the Speed Gaming channel. So right here, this exact same URL, you'll find both those races. And honestly, like, both of them are exciting, but Dash versus Solid is going to be something, because Dash so far has gone undefeated in this tournament. He's been kind of a dark horse. No one's expected him to get as far as he has without dropping a match. And Squall, he's one of our sub 40 runners, definitely a very strong player, but he's been having some rough times lately, and I don't think he's had as much practice. So that's something that could be very interesting. And so I encourage people to definitely check that one out and catch Giga versus Mimi if you can as well. And then we do have several more matches planned throughout this week, so stay tuned for more Wings of V.
Yeah. Let's look forward to.
Absolutely. Anybody else want to say anything?
Thanks for commentating, guys.
Yes, thanks.
Thank you for racing. It was really, really fun. It was fun to watch. And fun to comment sets.
And thanks again to Speed Gaming. Shoutouts to you guys for helping us put on this tournament. If it wasn't for you, this would be very hard to do. And Soldrin as well, should be noted, has got this game on sale, I think. If it's still going.
I think it's still on sale, as far as I know.
And it was on sale specifically for this tournament. So if anybody's watching this, thinks this game looks cool and wants to try it out, now's a good time.
Yeah, it's 25% off up until the 21st of May. So if you want to get in, now is your chance.
Absolutely. Yeah, good game to both of our runners, and we'll catch you guys later. Thank you for watching.
Yeah, see you later, guys.